It's just a science project.
Silent breed is people!
You know, a doctor friend once said the same thing to me. Frankenstein was his name.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
That sounds like something out of science fiction.
Please explain to me the scientific nature of the whammy.
We live in a spaceship, dear.
So? Yes, science!
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Hello and welcome to episode 204 of Science on Top. Today is Sunday the 25th of October 2015. I'm your host Ed Brown and as usual I'm joined by Dr. Shane Joseph.
G'day.
And Penny Dumsday.
Hello.
Now Penny, earlier this week I was perusing, as I so often do on the toilet, a copy of the Daily Mail. And I came across one particular headline.
I didn't know what that image in my head, but thank you.
Oh, it gets better, trust me.
The Daily Mail, Ed, why? Why would you do that?
Well, that's the thing. I came across this one particular headline that really grabbed my attention. Men really do have sex on the brain. And later in the evening when I was taking a bath and reading Maxim, I saw something similar. Men finally have an excuse for constantly thinking about sex, according to science.
Oh, God, I hate where this is going.
Now, well, I know the human male is a simple creature, Penny. But what's this all about? Are men really obsessed with sex, or is it just me?
Oh, clearly, because, I mean, obviously we take everything from studies of nematode worms and just kind of directly apply that to human beings.
Nematode worms?
Nematode worms. So there's this one kind of worm. They're not earthworms. They're a different kind of worm. I think, look them up if you want to know more about them. There's one particular one, C. elegans, which has been studied in humongous depth. And essentially we know about what happens during development to every single cell of this worm. And all of the neurons are known and all of their connections. They just have 302 neurons. And we know how they're connected and really what they work. So to do that with a human brain with billions and billions of nerve cells is just, you know, it's
unfathomable with current technology.
Yes. However, it turns out that there's two sexes of these worms, hermaphrodite and male. And
that's the part that I love as well.
Oh,
it's not a male and female, but the hermaphrodites obviously self-reproduce, but the males are there to just inseminate the hermaphrodites to add diversity to the gene pool. Is that right?
I guess so. I didn't actually look into how their sex system works because I don't know if they're hermaphroditic in that they can inseminate another worm because I know earthworms can, when they have sex, they basically swap semen.
Yeah.
Or they can. So I don't quite know how their genders work. But and it turns out that the ones that have been studied in detail are the hermaphrodites. Males have more neurons. Instead of 302, they have 385. And it seems that two of those neurons are mystery cells that have been discovered when people are looking at males rather than hermaphrodites, and they lit up in an unexpected way near the nose of the worm. So, What do these neurons do? This is an organism where we thought we knew what every single cell does, essentially. And these neurons, and this is probably one of the reasons I thought this story was funny, is because they call them MCMs, short for mystery cells of male.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
Another way of saying they're there, but we don't know what they do.
And they're male, so, you know, they're obviously sex-related.
They're sex-related. Well, in fact, they are. These neurons seem to influence whether the worms choose mating or eating. Now, obviously, both of these things are really important for survival. If you stop eating, you die. You can't mate. Your genes cannot pass on. So eating is pretty important for survival and reproduction. But obviously, if you just eat and you don't mate, then your genes aren't going to pass on. So it's going to be some way of balancing the two drives. And these neurons seem to be involved in that. So to test out what they did, they conditioned the worms to dislike salt. So they associated salt with starvation, and I feel very sorry for the little worms. But then they added mates to a salted arena. So you've got this like salty arena full of potential mates and adult male worms. So usually what would happen is those male worms would override their aversion to salt and go and mate with the hermaphrodites. But if they had those mystery neurons removed, they got out of there. They chose eating instead. So these...
okay. So there was another option to leave the arena altogether and find food.
Yeah, so they could leave, go and get food, because they know that there's not going to be food there. Food is... salt means starvation.
So without those neurons, they...
Without those neurons, they go and eat. With the neurons, they're like, nope, this is important.
It's still on, let's go and bang.
Let's go. Let's Marvin Gaye and get it on.
Very cool. Okay. So these cells obviously have something to do with learning, like a cause and effect or a association type thing then.
Yeah, or even decision making. Mm-hmm. So do I stay and look for a mate? Is that more important, or is getting food more important? So presumably there's circuits like that in our brains too, but I'm guessing a little more complex.
There's only one way to find out. Let's get a salted arena.
Yeah, just go for it. But I think it's really interesting. I think, look, as often we've remarked, the headlines are sort of, the headlines are not sort of clickbait. The headlines are 100% unashamed, unabashed clickbait.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks, good luck to them.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting. I love reading about studies on this particular worm because the idea that we can map a nervous system and think about what each cell is doing is just fantastic. And it is a pretty big evolutionary decision or a behavioural decision that
I'm actually...
in evolutionary terms is quite significant.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm actually just fascinated that they found another genetic function in this thing that's been so studied, dissected, like it's exhaustively studied, and yet they found another function in a different gender of worm that they had never found before. I'm like, that just shows you it sort of indicates to me that there might be a lot more that
nothing
we don't know.
Ever done.
Yeah, like in really well studied systems, even that we think we know inside out, there are probably still things that we haven't found.
Yeah.
And I sort of wonder how that happens. Like, does everyone just been going, oh, these neurons are a bit weird, but I'm sure if they were significant, someone would have mentioned it. So we'll just carry on. And you sort of ignore those two neurons for decades.
The first person did it on a hermaphrodite, so we want to compare our results to theirs. So we'll make sure we use... who knows?
Yeah. And they didn't check the males. Yeah, possible.
Wow. Okay, Shane. Have a listen to this.
A Dyson sphere. It's a very old theory, number one. I'm not surprised that you haven't heard of it. In the 20th century, a physicist called Freeman Dyson postulated the theory that an enormous hollow sphere could be constructed around a star. This would have the advantage of harnessing all the radiant energy of that star, and any population living on the interior surface would have virtually inexhaustible sources of power.
Well, a large team of scientists this week published a paper in the online journal Archive about a strange star, KICE 84628552, which has an unusual pattern of dimming and brightening. We're not quite sure why, but one of the explanations they proposed was a possible Dyson sphere, or perhaps the remnants thereof. It's an intriguing idea, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it's great. I mean, I read about the Dyson sphere years ago, and I just thought my first thought was we don't have enough resources. No civilization will have enough resources to build something that huge. And my second practical question was, well, wouldn't you be blocking your sunlight? Wouldn't this be a stupid idea? But it makes sense. I mean, it sort of goes back to a lot of these theories that this guy Dyson postulated, and that certain types of civilizations would have an ever increasing need for power.
Well, that's certainly true, I think.
Well, yeah, and you can see it with our civilization, obviously, but it goes like, think of how much we consume now as not even a type 1 civilization, which is another one of those on that scale of sliding, hierarchies of civilizations, and we're not even type 1 yet, i.e. we're not using all our planet's resources.
Yep.
Type 2 is where you would use all the stellar power of a nearby star, and I mean all, not just like a fraction of what we could use right now. So this guy Dyson came up with this idea, as Patrick Stewart so eloquently explained in that little clip, of a civilization that would build these huge scaffolds around a star and basically, use the solar energy to power their civilization. Now, it's obviously, it's a thought experiment, basically. It doesn't, we've never found any proof of this, except maybe now.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, maybe. So they've, as Ed said, this star is about 1,500 light years away from Earth.
Okay.
It's about the same size as our sun, maybe a little bit bigger. It's about the same age as our sun. So it's not a young star, and that will become very important later on in this explanation. Basically, whenever we see a planet transiting around a star, even if it's a really big planet like a Jupiter-sized planet, it only dims about 1% of the star's light. So if we're looking, so the Kepler mission has been looking at stars all through the nearby galaxy anyway, the stuff that we can see, and it will see transiting planets, and they're only dimming the star's light by a fraction. This star is getting dimming episodes by like 20% of its light, which is huge. I mean, that almost suggests that another star is coming in front of it.
Yeah.
Or
some very large object that's a large percentage of the size.
Yeah, and if it were a new star, like a young star, you could maybe explain this away by dust, like interstellar dust, or like the disk that surrounds new stars. But apparently, that the star's about our sun's age, so that's not possible. There is another possible explanation in that apparently about very close to this star is it's a binary system, and there's like a dwarf star that's very close to it. Now, this dwarf star could be disturbing this star's Oort cloud, which is basically the big, icy sort of surrounds of that star, which we've got around our own star.
Yeah.
And that could be causing, these icy fragments to sort of rush in towards the center of into the star's orbit and block the light. But even so, that'd be a lot of activity.
There's also a nearby star which would be affecting that Oort cloud anyway, so it probably wouldn't have had a bigger an effect as even ours would. So. Well,
yeah. So basically, so this is all summed up very nicely in a Phil Plait article on Slate, which unfortunately you can only look at it a few times a month before it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They've put up a paywall now for 5 times per month, and then you got to pay for it, but that's fine. So it's all summed up in a very nice Phil Plait article, and what he basically says is, look, there is a very, 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 very minute chance that this could be an alien civilization that has created this huge Dyson sphere-like structure, and what's the harm in looking at this star and getting more data? So this is all found by Kepler. Before Kepler, I think until about 2014, Kepler was looking at this star and other stars around it, and it collected all this data, and then Kepler's its wheels screwed up again. I can't remember exactly what happened, but basically it was repurposed for another mission.
Yeah, a reaction wheel, or two of the reaction wheels that stabilize it and point it in the one direction.
Yeah. So basically our data of this star has been up to 2014 and then it has stopped. So as far as I'm aware, they've repurposed, or they're trying to get another telescope, a ground-based telescope, to look at this star.
They have. At the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute, the SETI Institute, they are using the Allen Telescope Array, which is an array of 42 radio telescopes in California, and they're focusing that on the star. But obviously that's a radio telescope. Kepler was using optical imagery and infrared imagery. So it's just more data. The more information you get on different wavelengths, the better idea we'll have of what is going on.
And more recent data, like it'll be stuff that we're getting in real time. Well,
exactly.
So it's really cool. Like it's I very, very much doubt it's going to be aliens, but it'll be something natural that we hadn't thought of before. And as far as I'm aware, no one's ever seen this amount of star dimming, basically.
Yep.
So in a star this old anyway. So this is a point where I wish Lucas were on the show today, because he would have lost it over this. He would have been all over this, so it would have been great.
He should be back next week, so we'll ask his opinion then, perhaps. But
I think by then they would have probably maybe found out that it's not.
Oh, you cynic! You're also optimistic that we'll have any information within a week.
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
That's not how astronomy works.
But as you were saying, you were saying about the previous article where the news media has run rampant with the males think of sex all the time. This is the same thing. The same thing's happened here. Like I've seen since I saw that Slate article by Phil Plait, I've seen a multitude of articles all over the internet about, oh, we might have detected an alien civilization. Oh my god! It's like, oh no, guys. It's probably not aliens, but it's cool.
It is, and also it's probably more likely to be
comets,
a swarm of comets, or the remnants of some huge planetary collision, or something like that. But,
well, I mean, I keep thinking of the I think there have been multiple papers on the possible physics of this. More than that, I think of the amount of material you would need to cover a star. And even a fraction of the amount, like like think of the size of the Earth, or even the size of a planet like Jupiter compared to our star, which is a fairly small star.
Yeah.
And the amount of material you would need to cover that much of a star.
The amount of actual atoms that you need, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost it's a bit like, the physics into going into creating the Death Star. It's just insane. Like, it doesn't actually work. You would need to mine the resources of thousands of planets to get that much raw material to do this. So
yeah,
I'm not even sure if a Dyson sphere would be possible.
Well, I would say if you have the technological capability to build a Dyson sphere, then you have the technological capability to get resources from other solar systems and build it. Who knows?
Yeah. Then to get to those other solar systems, you would need the energy in the first place. This is a whole...
As you say, it's a bit of a thought experiment, and there's lots of permutations that you can work into it. But I think it's exciting and intriguing nonetheless, and I look forward to it being proved not aliens.
I hope it's aliens. I really do. I think it'd be amazing.
It'd be incredible.
Before they come and squash us like bugs, because they can build a Dyson sphere and we can't.
Anyway, Penny, back here on Earth, the timeline for the origin of life is getting more and more refined all the time. Researchers have found evidence of microorganisms that lived in what is now Western Australia at least 4.1 billion years ago. Now, if that's confirmed, that means life originated on Earth 300 million years earlier than we previously thought. And more excitingly, this is like before the period of heavy bombardment when the Earth was getting pummeled by rocks and everything. So it's even more astounding.
Yeah, if this is true, it's really exciting for a lot of reasons. Because not just that life is old, because I think for most of us, the difference between 3.8 and 4.1, you're like, it's big. It's whatever you say, it's big. But that heavy bombardment period is probably thought to have wiped out any life that would have been there. So if there was life there and then a mere 300 million years later it popped up again, it suggests that it's actually kind of easy for life to begin, that it's not some completely freak accident that happened, but that if you have the right ingredients, it's almost going to happen. And I know that, there's simulations of early Earth and so on that suggest that it is, the raw ingredients of life can get formed. But this could be a little bit of evidence to suggest that life is a likely thing to happen. I wish it was about, at least 10 years ago when I had just finished studying geology, because I feel then I would have really been able to engage with the science behind this a bit better. But the evidence for this ancient life is some really old rocks in WA, and Western Australia is one of the oldest bits of crust in the planet that we can access. And it's crystals, zircon crystals.
Zircon again.
Zircon, always zircon. It lasts. And these, even though the rocks that they are in may not be 4.1 billion years old, we can say, well, the zircons are. And what these zircons had, these 4.1 billion year old zircons, were little inclusions or little bits of their environment that were trapped inside them as they formed. So when they formed all that time ago, other stuff got caught in them. So they're not pure zircon.
Yep.
There's little bits and pieces. And what they found is some dark specks that when they analysed them had bits of chemical structure that could be linked to a microorganism. And they also found graphite, which is essentially pure carbon, which suggests that there's carbon there too. So this is exciting. There's carbon, there's the stuff you need for life. But what they haven't found, and what no one is ever going to find, is a 4.1-year-old fossil bug. So we've found chemical traces, and sadly enough, I suspect this is the kind of thing that scientists are just going to be able to argue about forever.
Well, because what we're sort of talking then, we'd be talking a single-celled organism without mitochondria or something like that. So you're really basically talking about a cell.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, at what point does a cell become life as we know it? I don't know where I'm going with that train of thought.
No, I know. Like, if you have a membrane and a bit of DNA inside, like, when was it live? Yeah, how do you know it's reproducing and doing all the things that we would consider a living organism to do? And do you even need DNA? Can you just not have an RNA-based cell? Then we go into the whole are viruses alive and that sort of stuff. And I'm sure I read somewhere about some suggesting that protein, anyway, like prions, anyway, and so on. So without getting too philosophical, I think this is interesting. I think, you know, there's no reason to say, well, no, life couldn't have evolved 4.1 billion years ago. I don't think it's conclusive. Like, although there's no other explanation yet, like, and also just saying that, oh, there was a heavy bombardment, therefore that's going to wipe out all life. Well, not necessarily, because there could be plenty of places where the life would be sheltered or protected from such a bombardment, and all sorts of things that can happen to make that not an issue. But and especially if we don't even know the characteristics of what this life might have been. Like, we presume, oh, it's primitive and fragile, but it might have been tough as nails. Like, you know. Yeah. It's also, I think it's just extraordinary to think that we can get this far back. I mean, 4.6 billion years, whatever is the age of the planet. We can go back as far as 4.1, are we saying here, that we can found possibility of life. And this is on a planet that is constantly changing. Rocks are continually being recycled and getting melted in the mantle and everything. So over that 4.1 billion years, it's amazing that there's any such trace or any glimpse at all surviving. It is, especially because sometimes these ancient crystals are found in rocks, I mean, almost always, that have been metamorphosed and broken down and changed. Like, yeah, it's amazing. I love that aspect of geology, that sense of deep time. It's just underneath us all, and you're not even aware of it until you start. Well, I mean, you know, on our time scale, it seems like an age, but in actual geological time, it's not very long at all. It's 300 million years is in the scheme of a 4.6 billion year old planet. It's almost instant. And like Ian Malcolm said, life finds a way. Life always finds a way. All right. Well, on that note, we should finish up. As usual, all the links are on the web at scienceontop.com/204. Please leave us a comment there or send us an email, feedback@scienceontop.com. And, of course, Twitter and Facebook and all of that. Thanks for joining me, Penny and Shane. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back again next week, putting science on top of the agenda. Join us then.
Let's bring in CBS News science contributor Michio Kaku. Okay, what is happening? Why is this star causing scientists to wonder in fascination what might be out there?
Well, we don't know, and this could be the biggest story of the past 500 years, bigger than the discovery of America by Columbus, or it could be the biggest wild goose chase since the Loch Ness Monster.